Yo, what's happening everyone? In today's video, I'm going to be VOD reviewing my games from the most recent Solo Cash Cup. I only finished on 108 points, but there was multiple times throughout the tournament that I was on track to getting my first earnings. I made a few mistakes, but I'm sure if you stick around, there are a few things that you can learn to help you place better in the next Cash Cup and possibly even get you your first earnings on Fortnite. I want to start off here by looking at my match history. As we can see here, probably my biggest flaw is making it past early game, as I've died off spawn 4 games here. In these cash cups and this format, you want to make sure that you're only dying off spawn for a maximum of 1 game in these cash cups. I did get a few unlucky deaths in these early games, such as bad RNG and stuff like that, but that's mainly a result of my poor landing spot. This is an example of something you don't want to be doing for early game in these cash cups. As you can see, I've landed at quite a small building with only a single chest spawn down here and then one up here if I'm lucky. If you look at where these other players that have landed with me are, he's landed over here, which almost guarantees that he'll have better loot than me when I'm coming off Tomato Head. Along with this other player that's also claimed house and has a brilliant loot path throughout the whole of Orchard. Going into next week's Solo Cash Cup, I'm definitely going to try and claim more of this drop spot as it's really good and it has plenty of loot paths coming off it. You want to make sure you're landing somewhere with a lot of floor loot spawns and chests. This is going to give you a better chance of getting some good guns off spawn, which makes it easier to win your drop spot. Going into this game, my plan of action was to get a fairly high kill win. However, coming off 2 really bad first games, I decided to just try and play for the win here. When engaging on fights in mid-game, instead of doing what I did and insta-ramping your opponent, you want to try and play for some pre-fight damage. As you can see here, my loadout's pretty good. I've got a lot of mats and a chug cannon, so it's almost guaranteed that I win this fight if I get probably like a 30 or a 60 tag at the start of the fight. However, instead I get greedy and underestimate this player, and I just start ramping him. In the end, this fight screwed me over completely. I ended up fighting here for about 3 minutes, which is something you really want to avoid. In these games, you want to be trying to close these fights as fast as possible instead of dragging them out for ages. As you can see here, I've burnt through all of my mats, and it's absolute shambles for me. I know here that my opponent's low on mats, so I just want to try and play angles to clean up this fight. As you can see here, this opponent's going to go for a jump shot on me, and I simply just move backwards to get out of his line of sight. As when you're quite far back on the ramp, the player doesn't really have a good line of sight on you, as you can see here. After I've moved back, I simply run forward because I know that his shotgun isn't ready to fire again, giving me a free easy shot on this player. Going into this 4th zone rotate, I scout for a little bit and I recognise that there's a pad pre-placed over here. Unfortunate enough for me, it's also right next to a drop. That means that I can do a really easy rotate and wrap around this left side, getting this brick as I go to refarm my mats. I can then get this supply drop to get the pad out of it, and then I can just pad into edge of 4th. One thing that I did on this 4th zone rotate that I think was pretty smart by me is I've positioned myself on the less congested side of 4th zone. Something that's really simple but really effective when going for easy refreshes. As you can see, it's going to be a lot easier to try and get a kill on a kid that's outskirts here and possibly over here than it is to try and get a kill here and possibly get third partied by all these players on congested side. Luckily enough, I pull first zone, which means I've got a lot of time before Storm catches up to me. In this time, you want to be looking for refreshes on backside. Even if you don't need one, you might even find a free kill, which is just good for the points. Whilst using this pad, I noticed that down here is completely free and there's no one, so that's where I'm going to position myself. I've just gone up a few layers here off low ground because you don't want to be ultimate low on first move in, as you might get psychoed by someone who's desperate for a refresh. Here I'm just constantly looking for kills. This is what you want to be doing instead of just chilling in your box and doing nothing. You want to make sure you're doing it safely though. There's no point jumping in on someone and ruining your entire game just for 1 kill. Here I'm going for smart angles and playing in my box still. Zone pool's quite far here, so knowing that I've still got a launch pad as I recycled one for first moving, I'm just going to go ahead and use that and try to land front side. Here I see that this player's quite oblivious and he's not yet realised that this is my wall and it's open. This gives me a really good opportunity to get a free kill. There I've simply just gone for the cone replace And then I've just forced the aim duel because he's only got a pump and I've got a purple tack. So I'm 9 times out of 10 going to win that. Going into this endgame on 50-50 zone, I only have about 6 builds. That means that I'm going to need to try and find a refresh quite soon. Here I get insanely lucky, and whilst looking for a pad, I spot a player that's recently disconnected. What I'm going to go ahead and do is go and land on this player, and then I can get all the mats and stuff, and I'm ready for first moving. What I'm doing here is I'm scouting for who could potentially have a pad, or if there's any placed ones in the area. I'm also looking for whose builds I can use to get myself to zone safely. Over here I spot this player getting into zone with wood. I know I've got a chug cannon, so I can sort of storm tank here and nobody's going to notice me. This shows the importance of listening to your audio cues. I hear that someone next to me's placed a pad, so I'm just going to go up and reuse it. Going into second moving zone here, I reuse a pad and I see that it pulls up this hill here. That means that I want to position myself on a fairly high layer instead of landing here and then having to scramble and get up. Here I pick up a quite easy kill just because this guy's awareness is really bad. Here I'm pretty backside, so I want to make sure that I'm on a fairly free layer to make sure I don't get held by anyone who's already in zone. Here I see this player that's on my layer here, so I make a split second decision to go up a layer, and it ends up working. Here I realise that I'm second height, which is somewhere you don't really want to be unless you plan on taking high ground later on. I make the decision here to drop down a few layers to make sure that I'm not getting sprayed by high ground so that I can go into the later zones with quite a few mats. Here I'm just trying to stick front side because that gives me more time to look back and look for potential refreshes. I hear a player directly underneath me and I edit my cone and I can see this guy right here. This is just going to be a free kill. I also see here that this player is trying to pickaxe through my builds, so they're probably quite shambles. I just pick up a free easy kill on them. Just a quick tip for 9th zone. The zone is so small that it's very hard to see normally on the map. So when you can't see it at all, it's probably hidden underneath one of these supply drops or something, which is where I assumed it pulled, and that's just where I position myself. Here I recognise my win condition. I see that I've got a chug cannon and I've got plenty of mats left. The two places that you want to be going into 9th zone is either high ground or low ground. So I check low ground and there it is as a free kill. Here I just make sure I'm covering my head, getting in front. I go back to make sure I've picked up any mats that I may have missed. And then I look for an angle on high ground. Lucky for me, he misses a few shots and he's a bit shambles with his mats because he was running on top of the builds. And when I won this game, I unleashed an absolute roar. Here it is. Give me my fucking money! My fucking money!
Wait, did you win?
60 points, bitch! Fuck yes! On second zone, what you want to try and do is pre-position yourself for centre third. Here you can see there's a lot of mountains in this zone. You've got these ones down here, this one over here, and these ones. And if you look at the majority of zone pulls, you can see that they like to pull up and down hills. So what I've done is I've positioned myself on the edge of this hill here. It also gives me a good line of sight on anyone boxing up in Catty or coming in from these lakes and stuff. As you can see here on 4th zone, I see that this mountain's still in the zone. And I know that later on the zone's probably going to pull up and down this mountain. So what I want to do is I want to try and stay up on the high ground to prepare for the later zones. I think this rotate here was pretty smart by me. I see that everybody's gone from where I am down here. So I want to go whilst nobody's going to be looking at me. What I do is instead of wrapping down here and getting up to the hill here and potentially getting shot at by all these people boxed up near Catty, what I do is instead I wrap around here and then I'm not going to get shot at until I'm around here. And by then I'm pretty much already in the zone. I think what I do here is pretty smart by me. Instead of staying backside and trying to leech a pad where there's lots of people and there's a possibility of me being pumped whilst hopping on it, what I'm going to do is I spot this pad just down here. I'm going to do a pre-rotate to that and then I'm going to use that to get through the rest of first moving. Here whilst I'm looking back for a surge and a potential kill, I hear someone hop on the pad that's behind me. I know that I've got a decent amount of time before they break the cone that's above the pad and then fly away, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go straight for the kill. I take my time here to make sure I've picked up all the mats and then I pad, because I know I've got med kits and I can take a few ticks of storm. Here I know that it pulls down the hill, so what I want to do is get on a fairly high layer so that when it pulls back up the hill, I'm prepared and I don't have to scramble up through loads of builds. What I do here is I switch to wood early on this rotate so that I can box up in metal later on when I'm in zone. Here I got a very easy rotate, simply because I'd use these builds above my head as cover, and then I'd wrap round to this right side and just played edge of zone. There I pick up a very easy refresh just because that guy's not very aware. Here I get front side so that I've got a chance to put my med kit. I don't want to be 140 health going into these later zones. Here I'm surrounded by a lot of builds and a lot of players, so what I want to do is try and find a really free layer to play out the rest of this game. A really easy way of doing so is to simply play Edge of Storm and then go up a few layers. As you can see, that's what I do here. And I just find a really free layer around here. Whilst I'm preparing to rotate into 9th zone, I spot a player on top of my floor here and I make a very big mistake. What I do here is I drop him down and I force the 50-50. It's not a bad thing if you've got very good pump aim, but with me I tend to miss very easy pump shots, which is what I do right here, and it ends up getting me killed.